The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a sight that would have taken Elena Rodriguez's breath away if she hadn't spent months preparing for this moment. The chamber stretched out like a cathedral of alien architecture, its curved walls lined with viewing ports that showed the swirling colors of the nebula beyond. Hundreds of seats rose in tiers around a central platform, each one occupied beings that represented civilizations spanning thousands of light years. Elena walked forward with measured steps, her black diplomatic uniform crisp and professional. Behind her, Captain Jake Morrison moved with the controlled grace of a career military officer, his hand resting casually near his sidearm, despite the supposedly peaceful nature of this gathering. Dr. Lisa Chun followed close behind, her tablet displaying the culmination of humanity's greatest achievements, ready to present their case for membership in the galactic community. The murmur of alien voices filled the air as hundreds of beings turned their attention to the small human delegation. Elena had studied recordings of previous council sessions, but seeing these creatures in person was still overwhelming. The Jeffrians looked like living crystal sculptures, their translucent bodies catching and refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. The Vorticons resembled massive squids, their tentacles draped elegantly over specially designed seats, while their large eyes observed everything with unsettling intelligence. The Hive Mind Collective's representatives were smaller than Elena had expected, insectoid creatures with multifaceted eyes that seemed to see everything at once. High Counselor Wexler rose from his seat, his crystalline form towering nearly 8 feet tall. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but Elena could hear the condescension beneath the musical tones. "So these are the humans we have heard whispers about," Wexler said, his words translated instantly by the chamber's systems. "The species that still burns chemical fuels to escape their gravity well, and thinks metal projectiles are suitable. Weapons for civilized warfare." Laughter rippled through the chamber, a sound that made Elena's jaw tighten. She had expected skepticism, even doubt, but the open mockery in their voices was harder to bear than she had anticipated. Captain Morrison shifted slightly beside her, and she could feel his tension like heat radiating from a furnace. "Honored counselors," Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite its vast size. "Humanity comes before you, today not to boast of our achievements, but to demonstrate our readiness to join the galactic community as equals and partners." Ambassador Gulthara of the Vorticons unfolded several tentacles in what Eleni recognized as their species' equivalent of a dismissive wave. "Equals?" The creature's voice bubbled with what might have been amusement. "Your species has not even achieved basic energy manipulation. Your computers still rely on crude silicon circuits instead of quantum neural networks. You fight wars with chemical explosives like primitives clubbing each other with sticks." Dr. Chun stepped forward, her tablet displaying holographic images of humanity's greatest technological achievements. "If I may address the council," she said, her scientist's mind focusing on facts rather than insults. "Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies across 17 star systems, and developed medical technologies that have eliminated most genetic diseases." The Hive Mind Collective's drone representative spoke in the unified voice that Elena found so unsettling. "Your FTL technology is based on crude wormhole manipulation that tears holes in spacetime like a child ripping paper. Our species achieved dimensional folding centuries ago. Your medical advances amount to biological tinkering when true civilizations have transcended the limitations of organic existence entirely." Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. "Perhaps our methods differ from yours, but the results speak for themselves. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that might have destroyed other species. We have learned to work together despite our differences. Work together? Dexler's crystal form shimmered with what Elena was beginning to recognize as contempt. Your species is so fractured that you still maintain separate governments on your homeworld. You engage in resource conflicts that any rational civilization would resolve through simple algorithmic distribution. You actually take pride in your capacity for violence. Captain Morrison finally spoke, his voice cutting through the alien chatter like a blade. Sometimes violence is the only language that aggressors understand. Sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds that Elena's translator struggled to interpret. When the noise died down, Gulthara's tentacles writhed in obvious agitation. This primitive mindset is exactly why your species is unfit for civilized society. True advancement comes through logic, cooperation, and the abandonment of barbaric impulses. Your weapons are laughably crude, added another voice from the Zephyrian delegation. Kinetic projectiles fired from chemical propellants? We mastered energy weapons before your species discovered fire. Your military tactics are based on deception and surprise attacks rather than honorable combat. Elena watched as slide after slide of humanity's achievements was dismissed with alien laughter. Their space stations were called metal cans floating. In vacuum, their terraforming efforts were described as crude environmental manipulation. Their art and literature were deemed emotional nonsense by beings who apparently had no concept of beauty beyond mathematical perfection. Dr. Chun tried again, displaying images of human exploration efforts. Humanity has shown remarkable adaptability. We have learned to survive in environments ranging from Arctic wastelands to desert extremes. Our explorers have mapped dangerous regions of space that other species avoid. Adaptability born of desperation is not the same as intelligent planning, the hive mind responded. Your species throws individuals into hazardous situations, rather than developing proper technological solutions. You celebrate risk-taking behavior that any sensible civilization would classify as mental illness. Elena realized that this was not going to be the diplomatic exchange she had hoped for. These beings had already made up their minds about humanity before she had even entered the chamber. Every achievement was dismissed. Every strength was reframed as a weakness. Every human quality was mocked as primitive barbarism. Vexlar raised one crystalline arm, and the chamber fell silent. The Galactic Council has reviewed humanity's application for recognition as an advanced civilization. We find your species lacking in the fundamental qualities required for membership in our community. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach as the High Counselor continued. Your violent tendencies, primitive technology, and tribal mentality make you unsuitable for interaction with truly civilized species. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when you have abandoned your warlike nature and developed proper respect for logic over emotion, you might be considered for provisional status. The dismissal was complete, delivered with the casual cruelty of beings who saw themselves as so far above humanity that they barely considered humans worthy of notice. Elena gathered her materials with as much dignity as she could manage, knowing that every alien eye in the chamber was watching to see how the primitive humans would react to rejection. As they walked toward the chamber doors, Elena heard the conversations resuming behind them, alien voices discussing humanity like scientists might discuss an interesting but ultimately irrelevant species of bacteria. She had come here hoping to open doors for her people, but instead she was leaving with the bitter taste of humiliation and the growing certainty that humanity would have to find its own way among the stars. None of them could have imagined that. Within 3 months, those same aliens would learn exactly why underestimating humanity was the most dangerous mistake they could possibly make. The first report came from New Geneva Colony at 0347 hours, ship time. Detective Sam Parker was finishing his coffee when the emergency alert flashed across his screen. 8-year-old Emma Tyler, had vanished from her bedroom during the night. Her parents found her bed empty, the window sealed, the door locked from the inside. No signs of struggle, no broken glass, no footprints in the garden outside. Sam had seen missing children cases before, but something about this one felt different. The security footage showed Emma walking calmly out of her house at 0200 hours, her eyes vacant and unfocused, moving like someone in a dream. She walked straight down the main street, past 3 security checkpoints, and simply disappeared at the colony's edge where the surveillance grid ended. Within 6 hours, 3 more reports came in from different sectors of the colony. Marcus Johnson, age 10, gone from his family's apartment. Lucy Adams, age 7, missing from her grandmother's house. Kevin Martinez, age 9, vanished while sleeping in the children's ward of the hospital. All of them had been caught on camera walking away with the same strange, empty expression. By the end of the first week, the reports were flooding in from across human space. Colonial Marshal Kate Wright found herself coordinating the largest missing persons investigation in human history. Children were disappearing from Mars Station Alpha, Europa Mining Base, the agricultural worlds of the Centauri system, and the frontier colonies beyond the rim. Helen Brooks hadn't slept in 4 days. Her son Danny had been one of the first to disappear from Earth itself, walking out of their apartment in New York at 3 a.m. The security guards had seen him pass, had even called out a greeting, but Danny hadn't responded. He just kept walking with that same blank stare that all the missing children shared. He was fine when I tucked him in, Helen told Detective Parker for the 10th time, her voice hoarse from crying. He was excited about his birthday next week. He was planning a party with his friends. Danny wouldn't just leave like that. Something took him. Tom Sullivan was having the same conversation with Colonial Marshal Wright on Titan Station. His daughter Sarah had vanished from her bed while the rest of the family slept. She was afraid of the dark, Tom said, his hands shaking as he showed. Right, his daughter's room. She never would have left without her nightlight. Something made her go. The pattern was always the same. Children between the ages of 6 and 12 simply walked away from safety in the middle of the night. They moved past security systems that should have stopped them, ignored adults who tried to talk to them, and disappeared into areas where the surveillance networks couldn't follow. Dr. Lisa Chun was pulled away from her xenobiology research to analyze the security footage. What she found made her blood run cold. The children all showed the same neural patterns in their movement. They walked with identical timing, identical posture, identical vacant expressions. It was as if they were all responding to the same signal. This isn't kidnapping in any conventional sense, Chun told the emergency committee that had formed to coordinate the investigation. The children are leaving on their own, but they're not acting of their own free will. Something is controlling them. Captain Jake Morrison studied the star charts that showed the disappearances. There was a pattern here too, but it took him days to see it. The children were vanishing in waves that moved outward from the galactic core, following the same routes that the alien survey ships had taken when they first contacted humanity. They're mapping us, Morrison realized during a late-night strategy session. Someone is systematically taking children from every human settlement, following our expansion patterns. The proof came when long-range sensors detected the alien ships. They weren't hiding anymore, these vessels that belonged to the species, who had mocked humanity just months earlier. Zephyrian scout ships moved through the outer systems, like sharks following blood in the water. Vorticon research vessels appeared at the edge of sensor range, always just far enough away to avoid direct confrontation. Hive-mind collection drones swept through asteroid fields where human miners worked, their sensors focused on the nearby colonies. Elena Rodriguez demanded an emergency session with the Galactic Council. She transmitted the evidence, the security footage, The sensor readings that showed alien ships in human space during every disappearance event. The response came back within hours, and it was worse than she had feared. The Galactic Council does not involve itself in the internal affairs of primitive species. High Counselor Thexler's message stated with crystal-clear coldness. If human offspring are displaying unusual behavior, perhaps this is a natural consequence of your species' unstable neural development. We suggest you examine your own failures, rather than attempting to blame civilized races for your domestic problems. Ambassador Galthara's response was even more insulting. Primitive species often lose track of their young due to inadequate social structures. The Vorticon Collective has observed this phenomenon in dozens of developing races. We recommend implementing proper behavioral conditioning programs to prevent future incidents. The hive mind's message was the most chilling of all. Individual attachment to genetic offspring is a marker of evolutionary immaturity. Advanced species understand that all young belong to the collective good. Perhaps this experience will help humanity develop more rational perspectives on reproduction and child rearing. Dr. Chun made a breakthrough when she analyzed the alien probe data that human sensors had been collecting for months. The probes weren't just mapping human settlements. They were specifically scanning for children, measuring their brain activity, cataloging their genetic markers, and tracking their development patterns. They're studying us, Chun reported to the emergency committee. But not adults. They're only interested in children. The probes are designed to identify developing neural pathways, adaptive immune systems, and creative thinking patterns. They're looking for something specific in human children. Detective Parker connected the final piece when he reviewed the timeline. The alien surveys had intensified immediately after humanity's rejection by the Galactic Council. The disappearances had started exactly 72 hours after the last alien probe transmission. This isn't random, Parker told the assembled investigators. This is retaliation. They rejected us from their club, and now they're taking our children. But why children specifically? The answer came from an unexpected source. A maintenance worker on Europa Base reported seeing lights in the sky the night before little Amy Foster disappeared. The lights had been moving in formation, too precise to be natural phenomena, too organized to be random ship traffic. Colonial Marshall Wright coordinated with deep space, monitoring stations across human territory. The data was terrifying in its implications. Every single disappearance had been preceded by unidentified ship movements in the local system. The aliens weren't even trying to hide their involvement anymore. Commander Rick Davis was assigned to lead a deep space reconnaissance mission to track the alien vessels. His stealth ship followed electromagnetic signatures out beyond the Kuiper Belt, into the dark spaces between star systems, where only the most advanced sensors could detect movement. What he found there would change everything. The alien ships weren't just taking human children. They were collecting them, storing them, transporting them to locations deeper in space where human sensors couldn't follow. The children were alive, but they were no longer free. Humanity's offspring had become specimens in some vast alien experiment, and the species that had mocked humans as primitive were about to discover exactly how dangerous it was to threaten a parent protecting their young. Commander Rick Davis pushed his stealth reconnaissance ship deeper into the void between star systems, following the faint energy signatures that his sensors had detected. The darkness out here was complete, broken only by the distant glow of stars that seemed impossibly far away. His ship, the Silent Runner, was designed for exactly this kind of mission. Its hull coated with materials that absorbed electromagnetic radiation and made it nearly invisible to conventional scanners. For 3 weeks, Davis had been tracking the alien vessels that disappeared into this empty region of space. The energy signatures were getting stronger, which meant he was getting close to something big. His crew of 12 specialists worked in shifts, monitoring every instrument, analyzing every piece of data that came through their sensors. Lieutenant Amy Foster was the first to spot the anomaly on the long-range scanners. Commander, I'm picking up massive power readings ahead. Whatever it is, it's huge, and it's heavily shielded. Davis studied the readings on his command screen. The power signature was unlike anything in human databases, but it was definitely artificial. Something was out there in the dark, something that was drawing enormous amounts of energy from sources his instruments couldn't identify. Take us in. Slow, Davis ordered. Full stealth protocols. I want to know what we're looking at before they know we're here. As the silent runner crept forward, the readings became clearer. The structure ahead of them was massive, easily the size of a small moon, but it was clearly artificial. Geometric patterns covered its surface, and docking bays large enough to hold capital ships dotted its exterior like craters. It's a research station, whispered Sergeant Matt Williams, the team's intelligence specialist. Look at those sensor arrays. This thing is designed for large-scale scientific operations. Davis activated the ship's most sensitive recording equipment. As they approached, what he saw through the enhanced visual scanners made his blood run cold. Ships were docked at the station, ships he recognized from the intelligence briefings about the species that had rejected humanity from the Galactic Council. Crystalline, Zephyrian vessels gleamed like jewels against the station's dark hull. Organic-looking, Vorticon ships pulsed with bioluminescent patterns along their tentacle-like extensions. The geometric craft of the hive mind collective sat in perfect formation, their surfaces reflecting the station's lights in mathematical precision. They're all here, Davis said quietly. Every species that voted against us. They're working together on something. Technical specialist Carol Brown was monitoring the station's communication frequencies when she detected something that made her gasp. Commander, I'm picking up biosignatures from inside that station. Human biosignatures. Thousands of them. Davis felt his heart stop. Children? The age ranges match, Brown confirmed, her voice tight with emotion. Commander, I think we've found them. I think we've found all the missing children. The silent runner moved closer, using the station's own bulk to hide from its sensor arrays. Davis activated every recording device on the ship, knowing that what they discovered here would determine humanity's response to this crisis. Through the station's transparent sections, they could see laboratories and holding areas that stretched for kilometers. In those areas, human children sat in strange chairs connected to alien machinery. The children appeared to be unconscious, their young faces peaceful, but their bodies hooked up to devices that monitored their brain activity, their genetic patterns. Their physiological responses, Dr. Lisa Chon's voice, came through the communication link from Earth, her tone barely controlled. What you're seeing confirms our worst fears. They're not just studying the children, they're experimenting on them. Davis watched in horror as alien scientists moved between the children, adjusting equipment, taking samples, recording data with the clinical detachment of researchers studying laboratory animals. The Zephyrians seemed particularly interested in the children's neural activity, connecting crystalline devices to their heads that glowed with pulsing light. The Vorticons were focused on something different. Their tentacled forms wrapped around scanning equipment that analyzed the children's genetic structures and immune systems. They moved from child to child with patient efficiency, cataloging human biological adaptations with scientific precision. Hive Mind Collective's drones worked in perfect coordination, connecting the children to neural interfaces that seemed designed to study human creativity and individual thought patterns. They appeared fascinated by the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human imagination. They're treating our children like specimens, Davis said into his recorder, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Like animals in a laboratory. They've turned human children into research subjects. Lieutenant Foster was monitoring. the station's internal communications when she made another disturbing discovery. "Commander, I'm intercepting data transmissions. The aliens are sharing information about human children with species across the galaxy. They're treating this as some kind of cooperative research project." Davis ordered his communications officer to patch him through to Earth Command on an encrypted channel. When Admiral Grace Kelly's face appeared on the screen, Davis could see that she already knew what he was going to report. "Admiral, we've found them. All of them. The aliens have built a research station in deep space where they're conducting experiments on human children. I'm transmitting all our sensor data now." Admiral Kelly's expression was stone cold. "How many children, Commander?" "Thousands, Admiral. Maybe tens of thousands. They have children from every human colony, every settlement. This isn't random kidnapping. This is systematic collection for scientific research." The data transmission took several minutes to complete, but when it was finished, Admiral Kelly had access to everything the silent runner had recorded. The evidence was undeniable and horrifying. "Commander, I'm authorizing you to continue surveillance, but under no circumstances are you to engage the station. We need more intelligence before we act." Davis understood the order, but it was the hardest thing he had ever done. Watching those children, seeing them used as experimental subjects by the same species that had mocked humanity as primitive, made every instinct scream for immediate action. Over the following days, a silent runner documented the full scope of the alien research project. The children were being studied for their adaptability, their neural plasticity, their genetic diversity, and their capacity for creative thinking. The aliens seemed particularly fascinated by human emotional responses and individual personality. Development. Dr. Chan's analysis of the transmitted data revealed the aliens' true purpose. They're trying to understand what makes humans different from other species. Our adaptability, our unpredictability, our capacity for innovation under pressure. They're studying human children because those traits are most pronounced during development. Captain Jake Morrison was assembling a response fleet when the final piece of intelligence came through. The aliens weren't just studying human children for scientific curiosity. They were trying to replicate human traits in their own species, to understand how humanity had developed characteristics that their advanced civilizations had somehow lost. "They mock us as primitive," Morrison said during the emergency command briefing, "but they're stealing our children to learn our secrets. They want to understand how a backward species developed abilities that their advanced technology couldn't create." The Zephyrians, for all their crystalline perfection, had become rigid and predictable. The Vorticons, despite their advanced biology, had lost the ability to adapt quickly to new situations. The Hive Mind Collective, with all their shared knowledge, had sacrificed individual creativity for collective efficiency. Humanity possessed something these alien species had given up in their pursuit of technological advancement: the chaotic, unpredictable, innovative spirit that came from being individuals who chose to work together rather than components programmed function as a whole. The aliens had made a critical error in their calculations. They assumed that studying human children would give them the information they needed without consequences. They believed that a primitive species would be unable to track them, unable to find their research station, unable to threaten their operations. They were about to discover that the most dangerous mistake any predator can make is to threaten the offspring of a species that will do anything to protect its young. Admiral Grace Kelly stood before the largest assembly of human military forces in history. Ships from every colony, every settlement, every outpost had answered the call. The fleet stretched across space near Mars Station Alpha like a constellation of metal and fury, each vessel carrying crews who had volunteered for what everyone knew might be a suicide mission. Captain Jake Morrison's flagship, the Earth's Fury, hung at the center of the formation. Around it, destroyers and cruisers that The aliens had dismissed as primitive metal coffins prepared for the most important battle humanity had ever fought. The ships might use chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons, but they carried something the aliens had never encountered: humans who would do anything to protect their children. Every parent in human space knows what happened to our kids, Admiral. Kelly transmitted to the assembled fleet. Every mother and father who tucked their children into bed and woke up to find them gone understands what we're facing. The aliens think we're too primitive to threaten them. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Lieutenant Amy Foster was running final checks on her demolition equipment when Sergeant Matt Williams approached her station. His face was grim with determination, and she could see the same expression on every face in the ship's corridors. "You ready for this, Foster?" Williams asked, adjusting the straps on his combat gear. "I've been ready since the day my nephew disappeared from Luna Colony," Foster replied, her hands steady as she primed the explosive charges that would breach the alien research station. "These things took our children and treated them like lab rats. Time to show them what happens when you mess with human families." The fleet moved through space with calculated precision, using jump coordinates that Commander Rick Davis had provided during his reconnaissance mission. The aliens had built their research station in the empty void between star systems, believing that its isolation would protect them from discovery and retaliation. Dr. Lisa Chun was aboard the medical frigate Mercy's Hope, leading a team of doctors and psychologists who would care for the rescued children. She had studied the alien technology extensively, preparing for the moment when human children would be freed from the experimental equipment that had held them for months. "We don't know what psychological damage they might have suffered," Chun briefed her medical team as they approached the target zone. "The aliens have been probing their minds, studying their neural development, exposing them to technologies we don't understand. Be prepared for anything." Captain Morrison watched the tactical displays as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the target system. The alien research station hung in the darkness like a metallic moon, its surface crawling with docking bays and sensor arrays. Surrounding it, dozens of alien vessels maintained defensive positions, their crews confident that no primitive species would dare challenge such overwhelming technological superiority. "All ships, this is Morrison." The captain transmitted across all channels. "Remember what we're here for. Those are our children in that station. Every human child who was stolen from their beds, taken from their families, turned into experimental subjects by beings who think they're better than us." The first phase of the attack began with electronic warfare. Human ships that the aliens had mocked for their crude technology launched cyber attacks that scrambled alien communication systems and disrupted their targeting computers. The Zephyrians discovered that their crystalline perfection made them vulnerable to frequency disruptions that human engineers had developed specifically for this battle. Colonel Beth Robinson led the first wave of boarding parties. Her troops, using shuttlecraft that moved like insects compared to the massive alien vessels. The Vorticons expected energy weapons and shield penetration tactics, but Robinson's soldiers carried magnetic mines and shaped charges that attached to hull sections and exploded with devastating effect. The aliens' advanced energy shields were designed to deflect plasma bolts and laser arrays, but they were useless against the kinetic projectiles that human soldiers fired from their supposedly primitive weapons. Bullets tore through alien armor that had been engineered to resist energy attacks, and explosive charges designed for mining operations proved devastatingly effective against alien hull materials. Aboard the Zephyrian command vessel, High Counselor Vexler watched in growing panic as his fleet's technological advantages proved meaningless against human tactics that no civilized species would consider using. The humans fought like wild animals, using stealth and surprise attacks that violated every principle of honorable warfare. "How are they penetrating our defenses?" Dexler demanded as his ship shuddered under impacts from human kinetic weapons. Their technology is centuries behind ours. The answer came when Sergeant Williams led his assault team through a breach in the Zephyrian ship's hull. The aliens had built their vessels for battles between advanced civilizations with energy-based weapons and predictable tactical approaches. They had never prepared for enemies who would use explosive charges to blow holes in walls, or soldiers who would fight hand-to-hand in the corridors of their ships. Ambassador, Gulfara's Vorticon research vessel fared no better. The creatures' tentacled form writhed in confusion as human boarding parties moved through the ship with tactics that defied every military algorithm in their databases. The humans didn't follow logical assault patterns or maintain proper formation discipline. They adapted their attacks moment by moment, using whatever worked and abandoning whatever didn't. These beings fight like chaos incarnate, Gulfara transmitted to the other alien commanders. They have no unified strategy, no predictable behavior patterns. How can we defend against enemies who change their tactics faster than our computers can process responses? The hive mind collectives? Drones found their shared consciousness becoming a liability when faced with human unpredictability. Their perfect coordination became paralysis when confronted with tactical decisions that had no logical precedent in their collective memory. Individual human soldiers made split-second decisions that confused entire formations of alien warriors. Foster's demolition team reached the research station's outer hull after fighting through 3 layers of alien defenses. The station's automated systems tried to stop them with energy barriers and defensive drones, but Foster had trained for this moment for months. Her explosive charges were placed with surgical precision, creating breaches that allowed human rescue. Teams to pour into the station dot inside the research facility. The rescue teams found horrors that strengthened their resolve beyond any breaking point. Human children lay unconscious in alien restraint systems, their young minds connected to machines that monitored and manipulated their neural activity. The clinical efficiency of the alien laboratories made the crime even more enraging. Dr. Chun's medical teams worked frantically to disconnect the children from alien equipment without causing further harm. Emma Taylor, Marcus Johnson, Lucy Adams, and thousands of other children who had been missing for months were finally being freed from their alien captors. Status report on the children, Admiral Kelly demanded over the communication link. They're alive, Chun reported, her voice thick with emotion. Sedated, but alive. The aliens have been using neural interfaces to study their brain development, but the children appear to be physically unharmed. We're getting them out now. The battle raged through the research station as human soldiers fought room by room to secure every section that held captive children. The aliens discovered that their advanced technology meant nothing when faced with humans who fought with the desperation of parents saving their offspring. Captain Morrison coordinated the assault from his command center, watching as his supposedly primitive fleet systematically dismantled alien defenses that had been considered impregnable. The aliens' mistake had been assuming that technological superiority guaranteed victory, never considering that motivation and adaptability could overcome advanced equipment. The rescue operation was succeeding, but Morrison knew this was only the beginning. The aliens who had stolen human children and conducted experiments on them would face justice, and the galaxy would learn that humanity's primitive nature was actually their greatest strength. The Grand Assembly Station had never been designed for defense. For 10,000 years, it had served as the peaceful meeting place for the Galactic Council, a symbol of civilized cooperation floating in neutral space where no violence had ever occurred. The massive structure gleamed with polished metal and crystal viewing ports, its elegant spires reaching out like the arms of a vast sculpture. Captain Jake Morrison's fleet surrounded the station like predators encircling wounded prey. Ships that the aliens had dismissed as primitive metal coffins now controlled every approach vector their weapons trained on the symbol of galactic civilization. The rescued children were safely aboard medical vessels, but Morrison's mission was far from complete. Admiral Grace Kelly's voice echoed through the station's communication systems, reaching every alien delegate who had gathered for what they thought would be a routine council session. This is Admiral Kelly of the Human Defense Force. The Grand Assembly Station is now under human control. All alien personnel will prepare for immediate arrest and trial. High Counselor Vexler's crystalline form trembled with rage and disbelief as he stood in the council chamber, where humanity had been rejected just months earlier. The same seats that had held mocking alien delegates now served as a prison for beings who had never imagined they could be threatened by a primitive species. "This is an act of barbarism," Vexler declared, his voice carrying the musical tones that had once sounded so condescending to human ears. "You cannot simply invade a neutral station and arrest the representatives of advanced civilizations. This violates every principle of galactic law." Ambassador Gulthara's tentacles writhed in agitation as human soldiers in primitive projectile-firing armor took positions around the chamber. The Vorticon delegate had spent years studying lesser species, but had never conceived that one of them might actually challenge the established order. "Your species lacks the authority to take such actions," Gulthara protested, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his alien speech. "The Galactic Council represents millions of worlds and billions of sentient beings. You are nothing but a single primitive planet with delusions of importance." The hive mind collective's drone representatives remained silent, their shared consciousness struggling to process a situation that had no precedent in their collective memory. For the first time in their species' history, individual drones were beginning to make independent decisions as their connection to the central mind wavered. Under stress, Elena Rodriguez entered the council chamber wearing the same diplomatic uniform she had worn during humanity's humiliating rejection. But this time, she walked with the confidence of a representative whose species held all the cards. Behind her came Dr. Lisa Chun, carrying data tablets that contained evidence of alien crimes against human children. "Honored delegates," Elena began, her voice carrying a coldness that made several aliens flinch. "3 months ago, you rejected humanity's application for membership in your council. You called us primitive, violent, and unworthy of civilized society." She activated a holographic display that showed images from the alien research station. Human children connected to alien machinery, their young minds being probed and studied like specimens in a laboratory. The clinical efficiency of the alien experiments was displayed for all to see. "Then you stole our children," Elena continued, her words cutting through the chamber like blades. "You took them from their beds, from their families, from their homes. You treated human children like laboratory animals, conducting experiments that would make any truly civilized being sick with disgust." High Counselor Vexler tried to maintain his authority even in captivity. "The research was necessary to understand the anomalous development patterns of your species. Human children display neural characteristics that defy conventional biological models. The experiments were conducted for the advancement of galactic science." Dr. Chun stepped forward, her scientific training allowing her to speak with controlled precision despite the rage burning in her eyes. "You studied our children like insects under a microscope. You connected their developing brains to machines designed to map their neural pathways. You exposed them to psychological stress tests to measure their adaptive responses." Ambassador Gulthara's tentacles shifted defensively. The subjects were kept in optimal physical condition throughout the research period. No permanent harm was intended or inflicted. The knowledge gained would have benefited all species in the long term. Captain Morrison entered the chamber with Sergeant Matt Williams and Lieutenant Amy Foster flanking him. The military officer's presence reminded every alien in the room that humanity's primitive weapons had proven devastatingly effective against their advanced technology. "You made one critical mistake," Morrison said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who had just won an impossible battle. "You assumed that being technologically advanced made you superior to humanity. You forgot that there's something more dangerous than advanced weapons or perfect technology." Elena activated another display, showing the human rescue fleet in action. Ships that the aliens had mocked as crude and primitive, systematically dismantling. Alien defenses, soldiers using kinetic weapons to penetrate energy shields, boarding parties fighting with tactics that no advanced civilization had prepared for. "You called us violent and chaotic," Elena said, watching as several alien delegates flinched at the images of human soldiers fighting through their research station. "You were right. When someone threatens our children, we become the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." The hive mind collective's drone finally spoke, its shared voice fracturing as individual personalities began to assert themselves. "Your species fights without coordination, without central planning, without logical strategic frameworks. How did you achieve tactical superiority over forces with millennia of military experience?" Sergeant Williams answered, with a grin that would have terrified any species that understood human expressions. "Because we don't fight like machines following a program. We adapt, we improvise, we change tactics faster than your computers can calculate responses. Every human soldier thinks for themselves and reacts to what's actually happening instead of what's supposed to happen." Dr. Chun displayed the final piece of evidence, the alien research data that showed why they had been so interested in human children. "You were studying us because your own species have lost something in your pursuit of technological perfection. The Zephyrians became so focused on crystalline precision that they lost the ability to adapt to unexpected situations. The Vorticans developed such advanced biological systems that they forgot how to evolve naturally. The hive mind achieved perfect cooperation, but sacrificed individual creativity." Elena's voice carried across the chamber with absolute authority. "You wanted to understand what made humanity different, what gave us characteristics that you're advanced. Civilizations had abandoned. The answer is simple. We never stopped being human." Admiral Kelly's image appeared on the chamber's main display, her expression showing the cold determination of a military commander who had just achieved total victory. "The Grand Assembly Station and all alien vessels in this system are now under human control. The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved. This sector of space is now under human protection." High Counselor Thexler's crystalline form seemed to dim as the implications became clear. "You cannot simply claim authority over galactic civilization. There are protocols, procedures, legal frameworks that have existed for millennia." Elena's response ended any remaining alien illusions about their situation. Those protocols were created by species who thought they were safe from primitive barbarians like humanity. You made the rules assuming no one would ever be strong enough to break them. You were wrong. Captain Morrison stepped forward to deliver the final judgment. Any species that wishes to coexist peacefully with humanity will be welcome in our space. Those who prey on children, who conduct experiments on sentient beings, who believe that technological advancement gives them the right to abuse others, will face the full consequences of their actions. A chamber fell silent as the aliens realized that their age of unchallenged dominance was over. The primitive species they had mocked and rejected had not only proven themselves capable of sophisticated warfare, but had also demonstrated something the advanced civilizations had forgotten: the absolute determination to protect what mattered most. In the medical bays of the human fleet, children like Emma Taylor and Marcus Johnson were waking up in the arms of their parents, safe from the alien laboratories that had held them captive. The primitive species that valued family bonds over technological perfection had proven that sometimes the most advanced civilization is the one that never forgets what it means to be truly alive.